Thomas, are you calling us from Florida today?
I am. I'm calling you from sunny Florida, the COVID capital of the Southeast. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. We're still on lockdown. Not completely on lockdown, but we can't go into, we're on partial lockdown. We have no live music, as you probably are familiar with.
Yes, unfortunately, no live music, but for some reason you can pack 300 people in an airplane. It's, non-essentially, but we can't have concerts, so we have bad lobbyists, I think, in the music business.
What's that all about?
Obviously it's not safe to have live concerts right now, and we wouldn't do it anyway, but it's a little silly that I was speaking to someone earlier who actually, they flew from Wisconsin to Texas, and the flight was completely packed, so you're sitting next to people, but you can't have a concert where, you have like 400 or 500 people. So it's got a lot to do with money, of course, and like I said, lobbyists and things like that. But hopefully by this time next year, this will be taken care of, and we can get back to rocking and rolling and having fun with all our friends and having some concerts, right?
Have musicians and the music industry generally been underserved, lobbyist-wise, politically, here in America?
In general, that's been a kind of a thing, hasn't it? Even if you compare that to teachers, too, they're just sort of marginalized, I think, until they're needed. I've never been one of those people that bellyaches about, musicians should get paid more or whatever, But you can see that people care more about restaurants than they do these live venues that are having to close their doors. And then you got the stores that are nearby, the live venues, or the pizza shop or the coffee shop that was kind of relying on concerts for their business. So it's interesting that it hasn't really been addressed, on a federal level. But for Kamelot, we've been very fortunate because we're in a writing period right now, which we would normally be at this time. So we had to shift a few concerts around and move them to next year. But in general, we've been really fortunate, and to have this live CD and DVD Blu-ray come out, obviously the timing was perfect for that.
People are obviously getting their fix from the television or their phones or whatnot, which is really just a television in your hand.
Yeah, it's we've had so many fans that are thanking us for releasing this now, and obviously it wasn't something we planned, but we're happy that that we were able to make it happen, and at least hold some of the fans over until we can come see them in person. That's something we're definitely working on. We're already planning the next concerts, but it's not going to be anything this year, that's for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the new live album, where it was recorded and why at that particular venue.
Yeah, we recorded the live record at the O13 in Tilburg, Holland. For the last 10 years, every show in Holland has been sold out for Kamelot, so that was a pretty obvious country. And then we found this venue a few years back. We've been playing there, and it's just perfect for the size and the production and the sound. Great facilities. So that was why we picked that place to do it.
Every band has their own market that is stronger than another one, right?
Yeah, for the most part. Definitely the Netherlands is a very strong market for Kamelot. Asia, different parts of Europe. We're pretty fortunate that we have a pretty solid fan base in most of the countries, pretty consistent. So it's really good for us. When we play in California, for example, if we play in Anaheim, we'll have 2,000 to 3,000 people at the Grove. So it's technically we could have done this in the United States as well at one of the bigger cities, but for 10 years, we just felt like it made sense to do it in Holland.
Which U.S. venues would be comparable to the 013?
Well, I just mentioned the Grove in Anaheim. That would definitely be something like that. It's a little smaller than what we played in Holland. The PlayStation Theater that we just played in New York City would be great. There's the Metropolis in Montreal, which is not the U.S., but it's North America. The House of Blues now. The House of Blues is smaller. Yeah, those are probably the three that would be somewhat comparable.
With the climate of the music industry driven by online consumption now, does it become more important to abandon more traditional avenues of success with music?
I think, if you're kind of referring to physical sales dropping versus digital or something like that, I mean, obviously touring becomes more and more important for bands these days. And, that's something that we do a lot of touring, but we're still very selective about touring. We're kind of fortunate that we also have a fan base that still likes physical. They still buy CDs. They buy a lot of vinyl. The new DVD Blu-ray has been doing fantastic. So I think you always have to think about different ways, whatever business it is, when you see changes. Obviously merchandise is very important at the live shows. So yeah, you definitely have to think about things differently these days.
You once again worked with, is it Sasha Poff? Is that incorrect?
So, yeah, well, that's pretty close. Sasha Paith is how you pronounce it, but it's kind of hard to know how to pronounce it.
Talk a little bit about your relationship with him. You've worked with him for a long, long time. Is that right?
Yeah, we've been working with him over 13 years. He is kind of like a sixth member of the band in a sense. He's a producer. He also helps with songwriting. Longtime family friend now, and we brought him in again to do the mixing, and he actually appears with us on one of the songs on the album. So great guy, amazingly talented. So he's definitely part of the team.
In general, are band members friends?
In general, in Kamelot, for sure. We are all like really good friends, which is really cool. I mean, in the past, I don't know if that's necessarily 100%, but for sure, the constellation of what we have today is, without a doubt, we are all really good friends.
A band can work without being a close-knit family, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you look at it as a job, which it is a job, but I mean, if you look at it solely as a job, you can definitely function, like any business where you got to deal with certain people that maybe you wouldn't hang out with after work, but it can definitely be done.
With the info at our disposal, what does touring look like post-COVID?
It looks like an empty venue right now, but there's I mean, we have a show planned for June of 2021 that I'm not sure will happen, but we have no plans of coming back to North America before 2022. And when I first thought about that, I thought that's kind of like overkill, but then when you look at the situation now, it's probably about right. So we basically are working on the new album now and focusing on taking a little bit of time off, which has actually been kind of good.
And how did you settle on the band name Kamelot? And what other names might have you been called?
Well, in the early days, we had this medieval kind of theme, So at the time, there was a music store called Kamelot. And to discern from that, we spelt it with a K instead of a C. And that was the idea, we wanted to write songs like that we were all into the whole medieval times and all that, those medieval shows where they kind of come to your town every once a year. And obviously we've grown from there and we've changed our topics are wide ranging, but that was the idea in the beginning.
Have you ever been involved with things like the Renaissance Fair or Dungeons and Dragons?
The Renaissance Fair, yes. Never Dungeons and Dragons. Like I said, we were, myself and the original drummer, were totally into Renaissance Fair stuff. I mean, that was big for me, and I just loved that kind of living in a different era feeling. And that's kind of what what the first album was about. You know, kind of this style of the Renaissance. Yeah.
So we're talking live streaming from empty venues and drive-ins. That's if that's what it has to be, that's what it has to be.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be. You can just not do it, which is what we're not doing that. It's just not. To me, the live experience is irreplaceable. And you know, if it came to where this is the normal, yeah, we would do that. But we're willing to wait till to where we can tour like we used to. And I think that's because that experience is irreplaceable.
Pre-pandemic, what has changed the most in the music business for the positive?
Like, I think a lot of bands, including Kamelot, you know, are always like working on the next tour, and this kind of forces everybody to take a little break, which normally we wouldn't have done unless we had to. But I think for mental health and for just, you know, physical health, it's been good. I wish there was a different way to do it, but in general, I think that the break has been good for everybody.
What was the first album that you bought with your own money?
I think it was Yngwie Malmsteen, Rising Force.
And do you remember what your first rock and roll T-shirt might have been?
I went to a Styx concert when I was 10. Got a T-shirt. I don't know where that T-shirt is.
And then finally, what is your most prized music collectible?
Well, yeah, I grew up loving Michael Schenker, so when I met him in person, I got some guitar picks from him. So that's probably my most prized musical collection outside of stuff that I have of my custom guitar, stuff like that. But in terms of like idols that I had growing up, having this guitar pick from Schenker was pretty huge.
Give me final thoughts that you'd like to share with anybody that might be listening to this.
Oh, well, just thanks for the Vine, and looking forward to, at some point, coming and seeing people in person. But in the meantime, check out I Am the Empire, the CD, the DVD, Blu-ray. And we miss you guys, and just stay safe, and we'll be back soon.